After another grueling day working at my finance job downtown, I trudged back to our upscale Manhattan apartment, expecting the usual routine, maybe dinner, small talk, nothing out of the ordinary. But the moment I stepped through the door, I sensed something was off. The narrow hallway leading into the living room felt colder than usual, not in temperature, but in vibe. There was Megan, my wife, crouched over a pile of papers spread meticulously across the floor. Normally, Megan radiated this fiery, spontaneous energy. She was the kind of person who couldn't organize a drawer without turning it into an emotional roller coaster. But that night, she was different. Focused. Distant. Every movement was sharp, methodical, almost surgical, like she was executing some well-rehearsed routine. On the small table by the entryway, neatly stacked guest lists, marked-up calendars, and an array of color-coded markers were laid out like artifacts in a museum exhibit. Each item was perfectly positioned, every detail screaming of precision and planning. I paused, taking it all in, feeling like an outsider in my own home. "Megan," I finally said, stepping closer. "What's all this?" She barely looked up, her voice clipped and distant. "I'm taking care of everything." No warmth. No invitation to join in. Just cold efficiency. The way she dismissed me with those 5 words hit harder than I expected. It wasn't just about the party anymore. This was something else. A statement. I thought back to the little signs I'd ignored. The way she brushed off my offers to help. The casual, almost habitual way she kept me out of the loop. I wanted to believe she just needed space, that she was stressed, but standing there, watching her deliberately exclude me from what should have been our joint effort, the truth settled in hard. This wasn't about independence. This was about erasure. Determined to understand what was really going on, I stepped into the kitchen, grabbed my phone, and called her mom, Linda. Linda lived in a chic apartment on the Upper East Side, always eager to gossip, which made her the perfect starting point. The line clicked. "Hello." Linda's voice was tense, hurried. "Hey, it's me. I'm home, and Megan's busy with party stuff. What's going on?" A pause. Just long enough to raise suspicion. She just wants to handle things on her own," Linda replied, her words rushed and hollow, like she was trying to get through them without giving too much away. Her tone wasn't just anxious, it was calculated. That undercurrent of forced nonchalance only confirmed what I was starting to fear. This wasn't about Megan proving she could throw a party without help. This was about keeping me out. Not satisfied, I called Jess, one of Megan's closest friends. Jess had this blunt, no-bullsh*t way of talking, which usually meant I could count on her to be straight with me. "Listen," Jess said flatly after I explained what I'd seen. "Megan's been dead set on doing this alone for a while now. If she's excluding you, it's because she's made up her mind. That's just how it is. No sugarcoating. No attempts to soften the blow. Just cold, hard facts." Hanging up, I stood there in the middle of our apartment, surrounded by the sterile, meticulously arranged reminders of a celebration I wasn't meant to be part of. The party wasn't just something she was planning without me, it was something she was planning against me. Every list, every marked date, every clipped response was like a breadcrumb leading me to an uncomfortable truth. I was being written out of the script. Later that night, after an awkward, tension-filled dinner where we barely exchanged words, I retreated to my study. I pulled out a notebook and started documenting everything. Timestamps, observations, snippets from my calls with Linda and Jess. Every little detail felt like a piece of a larger puzzle, each one reinforcing the gut-punch realization that Megan's so-called independence was just a facade for something more deliberate. Exclusion. I analyzed everything. The precision of the guest list, the way she dismissed me without hesitation, Linda's hesitant replies, Jess's blunt confirmation. It all added up. Megan wasn't just planning a party, she was staging a statement. A declaration that I was no longer necessary in her life. By the time I finished scribbling my notes, the city outside had gone quiet, the usual buzz of Manhattan fading into the background. I closed the notebook, my resolve hardening like concrete. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. If she thought she could sideline me without consequences, she was wrong. I wasn't just going to sit back and accept it. No. I was going to dig deeper, watch her every move, and uncover whatever the hell she was really up to. She'd made her move. Now it was my turn. The next morning, I woke up with a singular purpose. Find out exactly what Megan was hiding. Her calculated detachment, the way she was orchestrating that party without me, it wasn't just about control. It felt personal. I needed proof, not just gut feelings scribbled down in a notebook. I decided to start where I knew she'd be easy to track, her favorite cafe on the corner of Broadway and 42nd. It was a cozy little spot she'd frequented for years, tucked between a trendy bookstore and a boutique that sold overpriced candles. The kind of place she claimed helped her think clearly. Fitting. I got there early, found a table across the street, and waited. And sure enough, like clockwork, Megan showed up. She wasn't alone. Walking beside her was Kate, her best friend since college, the same Kate who always seemed a little too interested in our business. They slid into a corner booth under the warm glow of a hanging lamp, their heads bending close over a neat stack of papers. I watched from my spot, pretending to sip on a lukewarm coffee that had long since lost its charm. Through the cafe's large glass window, I saw them hunched over what looked like guest lists. Their pens moved quickly, names scribbled down and immediately cross-checked against an already prepped schedule. It wasn't casual, not the way they were acting. This was strategic. But it wasn't just them. Sitting with them was a guy I didn't recognize, mid-40s, dressed like he'd stepped out of some business casual magazine shoot. He didn't seem particularly engaged, casually flipping through a small notebook, occasionally fiddling with a pen. Something about him felt off. Like he wasn't really part of the planning, more like an accessory, just there to fill a seat. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything about that scene was rehearsed. The way Megan's hand hovered just slightly over each name before marking it, the quick, hushed exchanges between her and Kate, the stranger's detached demeanor, it all felt too polished. Too perfect. And then I saw it, or rather, I didn't see it. My name. Nowhere. Not even a hint. I strained my eyes, scanning every sheet they flipped through, but it was clear. Megan hadn't just forgotten to include me. She'd deliberately left me off. That realization hit harder than I expected. It was like watching someone erase you from a photograph, one deliberate stroke at a time. Fueled by a mix of betrayal and curiosity, I decided to get closer. I crossed the street, slipped into the cafe, and found a seat at a small table near theirs. I kept my head down, my coffee in hand, pretending to scroll through my phone while my ears strained to catch snippets of their conversation. "Make sure the seating arrangement keeps things balanced," Kate whispered, her voice low but clear. Megan nodded, flipping to another sheet. "I don't want any surprises." No surprises. The words echoed in my head. I was the surprise she was trying to avoid. Then came the opportunity I'd been waiting for. Kate reached into her bag, pulling out another stack of papers. Megan leaned over to grab them, and in that split second, I shifted my position just enough to get a better view. The handwriting was meticulous, almost mechanical in its consistency. Every name written with the same precise strokes, following what looked like a pre-formatted template. It wasn't just a guest list, it was a blueprint for something bigger. And I wasn't a part of it. My heart pounded, but my face stayed calm, hidden behind the rim of my coffee cup. I pulled out a small notebook from my jacket pocket and began jotting down everything. The layout of the cafe, the names I could make out, the way Megan's voice dropped whenever she discussed certain details. Even the stranger's occasional, disinterested glances felt significant. I didn't know who he was yet, but I had a feeling he wasn't just there for the free coffee. It wasn't an oversight. It wasn't about Megan wanting to handle things on her own. This was a calculated exclusion. And now, I was determined to find out why. As they wrapped up, gathering their papers and slipping them neatly into a leather-bound folder, I stayed seated, pretending to be lost in whatever was on my phone. Megan and Kate didn't even glance my way as they left, their laughter trailing behind them like some twisted punctuation mark at the end of an unspoken sentence. I waited a few minutes before leaving, my notebook filled with observations and half-formed theories. But one thing was crystal clear: this wasn't just about a birthday party. It was about erasing me from her life, one carefully planned detail at a time. But if Megan thought I'd just fade into the background, she was dead wrong. I wasn't going anywhere. The following day, I couldn't shake the image of Megan and Kate, heads bowed over those neatly stacked papers, like they were plotting something far bigger than a simple birthday bash. My gut told me there was more beneath the surface, and I wasn't about to sit around waiting for answers to fall into my lap. That morning, Megan left the apartment early, claiming she had errands to run. She didn't offer details, not that I expected any. But this was my chance. I scanned the apartment for clues, pacing through each room with fresh eyes. That's when I noticed her designer handbag carelessly draped over the entryway table. Megan wasn't the careless type, at least, not when it came to her expensive things. Curiosity gnawed at me. I approached the bag, my fingers brushing over the soft leather. Inside, tucked into a side pocket, was a small keyring. 3 keys, all sleek and new. One of them was labeled with a tiny tag, 1547 Madison Avenue. My pulse quickened. I'd overheard her mention that address once in passing, something about a venue for the party. But she'd brushed me off when I asked about it, like it was none of my business. Now, standing there with the cold metal of the key pressing into my palm, it felt very much like my business. I pocketed the keys, carefully placing her bag back exactly as I'd found it. No trace of my snooping. My plan was simple. I was going to see this place for myself. Later that night, under the cover of darkness, I made my move. I dressed in dark clothes, nothing flashy. Just enough to blend into the shadows of Manhattan's bustling streets. The city hummed around me, horns blaring, neon signs flickering, but all I could hear was the pounding of my own heart as I approached 1547 Madison Avenue. It was a sleek, modern townhouse. Clean lines, tall windows, and an air of understated luxury. This wasn't just some random event space. It was the kind of place people rented when they wanted to make a statement. And Megan, she was sending a loud and clear one, "This is my world now. You're not part of it." I slipped around to the back, where I knew there'd be less foot traffic. The key slid into the lock like it belonged there, and with a quiet click, I was in. The air inside was crisp, sterile even. No signs of life, just perfectly arranged furniture, minimalist decor, and that faint, cold scent of freshly cleaned spaces. It was like walking into a magazine spread. Beautiful, yes, but hollow. I moved with purpose, my steps silent against the hardwood floors. I'd come prepared, pulling out a small set of surveillance gadgets from my bag. Miniature cameras, audio recorders, the kind of stuff most people would never notice unless they were looking for it. The first camera went inside a decorative vase perched on a shelf in the living room. Its lens barely visible, but with a perfect view of the entire space. Next, I slipped an audio recorder behind a large mirror in the hallway, strategically placed to catch any conversations as people moved through. Room by room, I planted my silent witnesses. One tucked behind a potted plant near the dining area, another hidden within a cluster of books on a sleek metal shelf. I moved with precision, fueled by a mix of adrenaline and cold determination. As I worked, I couldn't shake the feeling that this house wasn't just a venue. It was a symbol. A monument to Megan's new life, a life that didn't include me. But that was about to change. Once I'd finished setting everything up, I paused for a moment, standing in the middle of the living room. The space was eerily quiet, the only sound the faint hum of the city beyond the walls. My eyes drifted to the sleek dining table, already set with polished silverware and crystal glasses, like it was waiting for an event I was never meant to witness. But I would witness it. Every detail. With the cameras in place and my mission complete, I retraced my steps, slipping back out the way I came. The keys burned in my pocket, a reminder of the invisible line I'd just crossed. But it didn't feel like a violation. It felt like survival. Back in my apartment, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my desk, staring at the notebook filled with my observations, adding new notes from tonight's infiltration. The townhouse wasn't just a venue. It was the heart of Megan's plan. And now, it was also the centerpiece of mine. The next few days were all about patience. I monitored the feeds from my hidden cameras, watching as Megan and her team, Kate, the mystery man, and a few others, came and went. They moved like chess pieces, each one playing a specific role in a game I was determined to win. But this wasn't just about catching her in a lie anymore. It was about reclaiming control. Megan had set the board. Now it was my move. The days that followed felt like living in 2 different worlds. By day, I went through the motions, shuffling papers at the office, sitting through pointless meetings, but my mind was always somewhere else. At night, I was glued to the live feeds from the townhouse, watching Megan and her inner circle orchestrate this party with military precision. The conversations were cold, all business, no warmth. It wasn't just party planning. It was strategy. But Megan wasn't stupid. She knew me well enough to suspect I'd be watching. And soon, her tactics shifted. It started with small things. Random errands. A text asking me to pick up office supplies from a store on Fifth Avenue. Simple enough. But the timing was odd, right when I'd usually check in on the townhouse surveillance. I brushed it off at first, chalking it up to coincidence. Then came more. Can you take the car to the shop? It's making a weird noise. Drop this package off downtown. It's urgent. One after another, these little tasks piled up. They weren't the usual favors between a couple. They were perfectly timed to keep me out of the apartment, off my surveillance game. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. This wasn't random. It was a smokescreen. Megan was trying to keep me busy. But I wasn't about to be played like that. The next time she sent me out, a last-minute errand to deliver some documents across town, I decided to flip the script. Instead of racing straight there like she expected, I took a detour. I circled back toward the townhouse. From a distance, I spotted her. She wasn't alone. There she was, standing outside with that guy, the one from the cafe. He wasn't just some random acquaintance. The way they stood close, the way she laughed at something he said, it wasn't casual. It wasn't business. My gut twisted. I'd suspected something like this, but seeing it? That was different. That was real. I stayed hidden, snapping a quick photo with my phone, documenting the interaction. Not that I needed proof for anyone else, I needed it for myself. To kill the last shred of doubt lingering in my mind. The errands didn't stop. If anything, they escalated. Megan kept sending me across the city with urgent tasks, picking up dry cleaning in Soho, dropping off a package in Midtown, grabbing some obscure item from a shop in the Upper West Side. None of it made sense. She could have handled these things herself. But that was the point. She wasn't trying to get things done. She was trying to keep me moving, to scatter my attention so I couldn't focus on what mattered. And it worked. For a little while. But then I started tracking her back. Every time she sent me out, I'd double back, making unplanned stops at the townhouse. I'd park down the block, watching from a distance, logging every face that went in and out. My notebook filled with names, times, and observations, little details that painted a bigger picture. She was hosting secret meetings with people I'd never met. Event planners, yes, but also strangers who didn't fit the mold. Too polished, too formal, like they were part of something more than just a birthday bash. It wasn't just the party anymore. It was about control. Power. Erasing me from the equation entirely. One night, after completing another one of her ridiculous errands, a late-night urgent grocery run, I walked into our apartment, exhausted but wired. Megan was on the couch, scrolling through her phone like nothing was out of the ordinary. "How was it?" she asked without looking up. "Fine," I replied, forcing a neutral tone. "Why didn't you just order it online?" She shrugged. "Needed it tonight." Her answer was so casual, so dismissive, like I was nothing more than an errand boy in her perfectly orchestrated life. But inside, I was boiling. After she went to bed, I sat in the dark, staring at the glowing screens from the townhouse cameras. Watching her live this separate life, planning a party she'd worked so hard to keep me away from. But she couldn't hide forever. I was done playing defense. If she thought she could distract me with busy work, she'd underestimated me. I had all the pieces. Now it was time to put them together. By now, it wasn't just about the party. It wasn't even about Megan's betrayal. It was about reclaiming control, taking back the piece of me she'd tried to erase with her meticulous guest lists and carefully crafted distractions. After weeks of monitoring her every move, one thing became clear. Megan had been leading a double life right under my nose. The townhouse on Madison Avenue wasn't just a venue, it was a symbol of the life she'd been building without me. And I was done standing on the sidelines. I needed undeniable proof of her betrayal. Not just for closure, but to confront her with the weight of her actions. And that's when I decided to take things a step further. It was a Friday night when I saw my opportunity. Megan had told me she'd be meeting Kate for drinks at some trendy bar in the Lower East Side. But something didn't sit right. She was dressed differently, more effort than usual. Her hair perfectly styled, that signature perfume she only wore on special occasions lingering in the air. I waited 15 minutes after she left, then grabbed my jacket and followed her. She wasn't meeting Kate. I trailed her discreetly, blending into the crowded streets, heart pounding with every step. She stopped outside a dimly lit lounge called the Viper, one of those exclusive spots where you had to know someone to get in. I watched from across the street as she greeted someone at the entrance. It was him. The same guy from the cafe. The same guy from the townhouse. They didn't even try to hide it. He leaned in, whispered something in her ear, and she laughed, this soft, genuine laugh I hadn't heard in months. That was the moment everything clicked. The party wasn't just about independence. It was about him. About the life she'd been building behind my back. I clenched my jaw, fighting the urge to storm across the street and confront them right then and there. But I wasn't going to let emotions ruin this. I needed evidence. Cold, hard proof. So I followed them inside. The club was dark and crowded, but I kept my distance, slipping through the sea of people until I found a spot near their VIP table. They were too wrapped up in their private conversation to notice me. Megan's hand casually rested on his arm, her smile soft, her body language relaxed in a way she hadn't been around me for months. I watched them for over an hour, every gesture carving deeper into the pit of my stomach. Then I noticed something. The guy was sloppy drunk. Slurring his words, fumbling with his phone, dropping it more than once. That's when it hit me. His phone. That device probably held everything I needed. Texts, photos, maybe even emails that could confirm what I already knew deep down. When he stumbled toward the restroom, I followed. My heart raced, but my hands stayed steady. In the dim hallway leading to the bathrooms, he leaned against the wall, scrolling lazily through his phone. I didn't think. I just moved. In one swift motion, I brushed past him like an annoyed clubgoer, my hand slipping into his jacket pocket with practiced ease. The phone slid into my palm like it belonged there. He didn't even notice. I left immediately, disappearing into the crowd and slipping out the back exit into the cold night air. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from adrenaline. This was it. The smoking gun. I called Michael, an old friend with a knack for breaking into phones, no questions asked. We met in a quiet parking lot a few blocks away, the city's neon lights flickering in the distance. I need everything, I told him, handing over the phone. Michael raised an eyebrow. You sure about this? I didn't even hesitate. Just do it. While he worked, I paced, my mind replaying every moment from the past few weeks, the cold dinners, the dismissive glances, the excuses. I'd been blind, but not anymore. After what felt like an eternity, Michael finally looked up. Got it, he said quietly, handing me the phone. I scrolled through the messages, my chest tightening with every word. Texts between Megan and him, plans for the party, complaints about me, even jokes at my expense. Photos of them together at the townhouse, her wrapped around him like I never existed. There were voice memos, too. One where she laughed about how easy it was to keep me busy with errands. Another where she talked about moving on after the party, how it would be the start of a new chapter. Without me. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. But beneath the hurt, something colder settled in. Resolve. This wasn't just betrayal. It was premeditated erasure. I thanked Michael, slipped the phone into my pocket, and headed home. Megan was already there, lounging on the couch like nothing had happened. She glanced up, her face the perfect mask of indifference. How was your night? She asked casually. I stared at her for a long moment, then forced a tight smile. Productive. I walked past her without another word, my mind already racing with the next steps. The game wasn't over. It was just beginning. The following days felt like the calm before a storm. But beneath that surface calm, I was burning. I had all the evidence I needed, messages, photos, voice memos. Megan's betrayal wasn't just confirmed, it was documented. Now, it was about one thing, confrontation. Not a messy argument, not some emotional outburst. No, this needed to be precise, calculated, just like she'd been. I spent hours going over everything, piecing together a timeline of her lies. Every late meeting, every girls' night out, every errand she'd sent me on, they all fit together like puzzle pieces. And at the center of it was her lover, the guy from the cafe, the townhouse, the club. He wasn't just a fling. He was part of the life she'd been crafting without me. I could have confronted her right there in our apartment, but that would have been too easy for her to dismiss. She'd spin her lies, maybe shed a tear or two, and act like it was all some misunderstanding. No. I needed to catch her where she couldn't run, where her carefully constructed facade would crumble. The party. The one she planned so meticulously, thinking I'd never be a part of it. That would be the stage for her unraveling. The night of the party, I waited until it was in full swing. I'd been monitoring the townhouse cameras all day, watching guests arrive, people I'd never met, laughing and drinking in the house I'd broken into, setting up my own silent watchtower. Megan moved through them like a queen holding court, all smiles, effortlessly charming. Like I didn't exist. But I did. And she was about to find out just how much. I dressed in dark clothes again, nothing flashy. Just enough to blend in. I approached the townhouse from the back alley, slipping through the shadows like I'd done before. The key still worked. Of course it did. She hadn't even noticed it was missing. Inside, the house was buzzing with music and laughter, the perfect party atmosphere. But beneath that polished surface, I felt something darker. The betrayal hanging in the air like a ghost. I moved through the house unnoticed, slipping into the room where the main electrical panel was hidden. I'd memorized its location during my first break-in. With a pair of wire cutters from my bag, I snipped the power lines, plunging the entire townhouse into sudden darkness. Chaos erupted. Guests screamed, stumbling in the dark. The music cut off mid-beat, and the flicker of emergency lights created an eerie, strobe-like effect. Perfect. In the confusion, I made my way toward the main living room where Megan had been holding court moments before. I found her quickly, frozen in place, her face lit only by the dim glow of the emergency lights. She looked around, trying to regain control of the situation, unaware that the real storm was standing just a few feet away. I stepped out of the shadows. "Megan," I said, my voice cutting through the chaos like a knife. She turned, her eyes widening in shock. For a moment, she tried to compose herself, forcing a smile like nothing was wrong. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice tight, strained. I stepped closer, my heart pounding but my face calm. "Oh, I thought I'd finally join the party," I said, my tone dripping with the same coldness she'd shown me for weeks. Her lover appeared behind her, looking confused and slightly panicked. "Good. Let him feel that." I pulled out my phone and held it up. On the screen was one of the photos I'd taken, the two of them outside the club, her arm wrapped around him, their faces too close to be just friends. The color drained from her face. "Thought you'd keep me in the dark?" I asked quietly, my voice steady despite the rage simmering underneath. "Funny thing about the dark, I can see just fine." She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. "Save it." I turned the phone around, swiping through the messages, the voice memos, the evidence of her betrayal. The room grew quieter as people realized something was happening, their whispers filling the silence Megan couldn't. Her lover tried to step forward, some weak attempt at damage control, but I shot him a look that stopped him cold. "This is the life you wanted, huh?" I said to Megan. "A party where I didn't exist. Guess what? I do. And now, so does the truth." I dropped the phone on the table, the screen still glowing with the damning messages. Then I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, exposed under the harsh glow of her own lies. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Outside, the cool night air hit me like a wave, but it felt good. Clean. I kept walking, leaving behind the sounds of chaos, the crumbling of her perfect little world. She'd set the board. But I'd made the final move. And I'd won. Thank you for visited my YouTube channel. Your support, likes, and comments truly inspire me to create even more engaging content. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. You're a part of this amazing community, and I'm thrilled to share my stories with you. See you in the next video on YouTube.